Gabatrix, the Terrorists of Batrice. With that, Hamisa kept her rifle perched around her shoulder as she walked up to the door. It slid open to reveal the same dark-lit passageway past it. She left the room as the door closed behind her. Mizu sighed as he looked around the room. He felt inclined to tap the jail cell wall with the two imprisoned Etrians inside, but he knew the camera was recording everything. It was best for him just to remain as he was doing before, but his feet were getting tired. The camera. There was something odd. As Mizu thought about it more and more, he had barely noticed it, but the very tiny hum of the camera was silent. He walked away from the prison box as he approached it. His ear was giving a hint. As the darkness had shown, the tiny LED bulb on the camera had gone out. "The camera is out," Mizu said to himself. "I guess the power blackout knocked it offline. Surprised the backup power didn't bring it back on. Good thing they have me to keep an eye on everything." He walked back to the box. He stood there for a few seconds when he began to hear a tapping sound on the wall. Hello?" yelled a female voice from inside the box. "Is there anybody there?" It caused Mizu to turn and listen. The man looked around. Hamisa had just left. His curiosity began to kick in more and more. He remembered what his superior had told him before when it came to these terrorists. The combination of all these things weighed down on him. Finally, he decided that it was best to see who these people were. He approached the console on the other side of the room and tapped the console. A menu screen appeared before he accessed the controls to activate the display settings. He first set it to one-way view mode only so he could see them, but not with him. A blue light lit up from the box as it divided up to show a large interior of the prison room that the two terrorists resided. The grey box illuminated to reveal a transparent, heavy-duty reinforced glass wall. As the blue light faded, the interior prison room's flooding light completely lit up the brig. It even caused Mizu to squint his eyes a little bit before they quickly readjusted. The two prisoners were clearly encased inside this room. The jail cell had two large beds that were clearly meant for humans. In the back center was a toilet. Besides that, there wasn't much else of note. The elevated box was perfectly designed to keep people inside. Mizu's eyes went to the two Utilians. It was the same woman that he saw leaving the Etrian shuttle before it exploded. One had her signature green and blue scales. The other one was almost albino-looking with a pointier snout. Both of them were wearing dark blue spandex-like prison uniforms. "What is it?" Mizu asked the one that called out. The audio was immediately patched in so both sides could hear each other speak. The white Utilian scrunched up as she looked around from her bed. The other one had a look of surprise as her feathers lifted up from her head. It was almost as if they weren't expecting anybody to respond at all. "Yes, the green and blue Utilian replied. Her voice had a similar accent, but it was dainty and light in tone. "You can hear me?" "Yes, I can," he replied to them. The two Utilians could still not see him, and he wanted to keep it that way. "Finally," the green Utilian said as she stepped away from her bed. "I wanted to ask for food. Genta, my friend, hasn't eaten in 12 hours. I think it was that long. The moment that he heard her talking, it sounded almost innocent or silly, possibly even both. He knew by now that the albino Etrian was named Genta. He still didn't know the other one's name. This Genta was scared but firm as she sat in the bed. The other one was more vocal, but she was all over the place in how she spoke. "What is your name, Etrian?" Mizu asked her. My name is Leo. The Atrian language was one that was utterly complex, that Mizu didn't even want to bother with. Her name was almost pronounced with the word Li-Lo, where the middle L and ending E were practically silent. Lilo, he replied as he butchered her name by accident. I'm not a cook or a waiter for you. If they decided to feed you that long ago, then they will get you your next meal soon enough. Please. Leo clasped her 4-digit hands together. I am worried about my dearest friend Genta. I can handle the lack of food a little bit longer than she can. She started to make a series of clicks in her voice. I don't want her to starve. Please. It was a reasonable argument, and one that he didn't see any harm. This Genta was a little bit thinner than Leo. Her voice naturally caused him to feel a little bit sorry for both of them, but he had to remind himself of what they were. Why didn't you bring this up sooner? Mizo asked her. I have been on watch for 3 hours and you haven't said anything about this. I did, Leo said, as she lowered her head. Her feathers even drooped as well. The guard told me that if I didn't shut up, that he would break Genta's arms. What? He remarked as he looked at her. Her reptilian eyes were focused towards the wall of his direction, but she could not see him. Is that guard still here? She asked. No, I relieved one of them. Both have been relieved. She did a couple of quick nods to acknowledge it. What is your name? He thought about answering that question. He was silent as she seemed to be apprehensive. He could watch the body language. Leo didn't seem to be the belligerent type. Then again, he had to keep his thoughts to himself. Regardless, he had to keep this in mind. He decided that it was best to placate her. There wouldn't be any harm in it. My name is Misu, he told her. Misu. It is an interesting name, Leo said, as she seemed a little more relaxed. Even her feathers rose back to normal again. It is a word that sounds very much like red flower in our language. Mizo said. Mizo, I have a request to make. The ambassadors are Cain and Ephra, all right? He thought about answering her. She was not in a position of power. She could pose no threat to the 2 ambassadors, and he could see some concern on her face. Finally, he decided to answer her. I don't know. I checked on them in the hospital. Cain's condition is bad, but he is alive. Ephra, I never saw her, but her condition is far worse. She's supposedly alive, but just barely. Leo shut her eyes as she closed in on herself. She went and sat down on her bed. Even Genta showed a similar sign as she curled up on the bed, with her tail wrapped around her digitigrade legs. Mizo could see more and more of the reactions. He had questions about their personalities. Were they lying and showing fake remorse? Did they feel bad that they failed in trying to assassinate the 2? Mizo felt confused about their reactions. Leo, Mizo inclined, what is it that you do for the Tarintar clan? I work for Ambassador Ephra. I help her in whatever way I can. I am a politician and secretary under her training. I even work in the, what is the word? Legal. Attorney, yes. She got enthusiastic for a moment. What about your Yvonne friend of yours, the one that doesn't talk? No, she is not an Yvonne. She looks very much like a male, and no, I'm not apologizing if I offended you. Leo momentarily looked at Genta as she was eyeing the wall. She gripped her hands to her legs as tightly as she could. She isn't an Yvonne, Leo tried to explain. She is a faux male. A faux male? Mizo asked. She comes from a religious sect in the former Utilian clan. They believe in not having their genes tampered with in the last tens of thousands of years ago. She began to make some clicks in her voice. The foam meal are very rare. They lay eggs and don't have breasts. This description was rather interesting to Mizu. He only heard a little bit of the bioengineering of the Atreans. The concept of the foam meal meant that she was actually way closer to what the original Utilians looked like long ago. They were an evolutionary halt to themselves. This Gentar was some sort of time capsule of the ancient Atreans. "Can Genta talk?" he asked the both of them. "Yes, she can," Leo answered. "Please, she is scared. The explosion took us both by surprise." Was that a lie? Mizo wondered about it. It was said so freely and seriously. These two women were putting up a strong front. The question, though, was motivation. Why did they do it? How did Batrice investigators get proof of motivation from these two women? The camera footage was there, but what was the reason for doing it? He was a pilot and not an investigator. He didn't know enough about the Zaza and what they did. The claim was that they were conspiring with this terrorist organization of the Atreans. Regardless, he had to keep these ideas in mind. He was not convinced that these women were innocent. The only way was to probe into them further. Leo put her hand to her stomach. Even if she was standing up for her friend, she was hungry. She appeared to be doing her best to remain composed about it. "How long have you worked with Ifra?" Misu asked. "Since we were children," Leo answered. "Did you give all this information to the investigators?" "Yes, but they didn't believe me." "What can you tell me about the blast? Explain to me the events that you saw." Leo seemed to think about it. Misu could tell that she had been questioned like this before. She didn't appear annoyed with the question and was completely cooperative. I remember being with Genta. We were carrying the personal belongings of the two ambassadors. We were far ahead of them by the time we reached the interior of this station. Then I just remember this massive explosion. Genta saw it a little bit better, but the blast blew us both to the walls." She gripped her arm. Misu wanted to keep the ace up his sleeve. He didn't want to tell them that he directly saw the events, at least not yet. He wanted to know if he could catch them in a lie. "Why were you ahead of the ambassadors?" he asked her. That is tradition," she answered. "In the days of the ancient past, the mediators? He corrected her. Yes, the mediators would do their best to serve as the defenders of peace in the Atrean clans. The first staff members were guards to those first line of ambassadors. It was reserved for the closest family or friends. If somebody were to try to kill Ifra or Cain, then I would take the first bullet for them." So you claim that you truly knew and cared for the two? Yes. I would never want to see harm brought to them. I feel like I failed her. I failed both of them. She lowered her head down as she gripped her arms in frustration. It was another indication of remorse, at least from what Misu could see. "What do you know of the Zaza?" he asked her. "They are pirates, thieves. They believe in no law," she replied as she looked towards his vicinity. "They commit horrible crimes in which they spread terror in the Tarintar clan." "The claim is that you or Genta work for them." No, we would never try to kill Ifra and Cain. The Zaza are cruel. What would I gain by killing my friends?" Mizu thought about it. Her words made sense, but again, these could be well-crafted lies. Anybody could betray others just as easily, and trust could be complicated at times. "How strong are the Zaza?" he asked. She shook her head. "They work in remote sectors. We try to find them, but they are elusive. They sometimes attack our shipping and sometimes attack our least populated worlds." "Sounds more like pirates than anything else," he remarked. "What would they gain by attacking this diplomatic meeting?" "None. We are trying to have a meeting to negotiate with the Batrice and Gillan trade committees. We were trying to talk and find common ground with all of you." Mizu thought about it. It might be best to go ahead and use this base of knowledge. She was giving up her information relatively easily. If she was some sort of conspirator, she was not doing an excellent job at it. Then again, the Tarintar clan could be capable of great cunning regarding these sorts of actions. A well-constructed lie prior to the mission could do wonders if one plans on hurting or stopping a peace negotiation. The catch was with the Zaza. If the Zaza information is correct, what did they genuinely gain from committing to this action? If anything, the Zaza were sounding more and more like thugs and rogues. He even thought of the Nova pirates in the Peloran system. He had to think like them. Something didn't make sense, and he had to learn more.